This week on Supercars Torque, it's the final one for the year. While Roland Dane looks for a brand new job, myself and Scott sit down and go through the top half of town and grade everyone. The big news this week is that you can find Gen 3 cars on iRacing now, just in time for Christmas. I don't play the game simulation, but it is actually exciting that now proper cars will be represented on there again. I'm sure that will keep a lot of people busy over the Christmas break. But of course, the actual big news this week, all jokes aside, Tony D'Alberto has actually been confirmed as Will Davison's co-driver for the Enduro campaigns next year. I think he's one of the longest serving, other than Dick Johnson, I think he might actually be one of the longest serving drivers at Dick Johnson Racing now. No surprises there. We all thought that was, just a formality. It's nice that it's actually been announced. And another formality one, Zach Bates has been confirmed at Eaglestons for a Super 2 campaign next year. Once again, they've got the champion from the previous year joining them. Or I think, they actually had Kai Allen. But they'll be running the number one in Super 2 again next year. Hopefully Zach defends hopefully for Zach, he defends it a little bit better than what happened with Kai Allen this year, because he dropped off a bit towards the end of the year. I'm not sure if maybe his mind was going towards, full main game supercars or what happened there, but it wasn't a great end to the year. Other big news this week, TCR Australia have announced their calendar for next year. Now, this is a category who didn't have many entries this year and seemed to be struggling. I didn't actually catch any of the racing this year, even though I was a Stan Sports subscriber. I didn't actually bother watching any of it. I did try. There's a lot going on. I can't just sit there all weekend watching car racing. As much as I'd love to, there is other stuff going on. So, can't watch it all. So TCR didn't make the cut. But yes, this is a category that is struggling. This is the calendar that they have announced for next year. Now, granted, it is only 5 rounds. So everyone complaining that Supercars is only going to be 13 next year. 5 rounds of TCR. Round 1, Taupo. That makes a lot of sense. If you're struggling to get numbers, let's send them all over to New Zealand. Unless the New Zealand promoters are paying for them all to go over there, I don't think they'd be getting the same sweet deal that Supercars are. But then Porsche Cup went over there this year. Porsche Cup have probably got more money. Anyway, okay, round 2, Wanneroo. Let's send them to the other side of the country. May as well be the other side of the world if they're coming from New Zealand over to Perth. There is big breaks between the rounds though, so you got a lot of time to do this. Round 3, Winton, that makes sense. Round 4, the Bend, although the Winton one is actually a standalone round as well. They will be. Maybe they'll be the main event there. I don't think they were the main event at their own events this year. Anyway, round 4 will be at the Bend at the Enduro. That totally makes sense. You're there on a big weekend for Supercars. The TCR probably will race actually really well at the Bend. That will be part of the TCR World Tour as well. That will be around, should have the internationals there. So that is a really good stage as well to put it in front of Supercars fans. Then, you might watch it, you see the internationals there, they put on some really good racing on a track that suits that kind of car, and you go, hey, these guys are actually okay, and start to follow it. But then the next problem, round 5, Macau. So you're going to the furthest reach of Australia for one of the rounds, and you got 2 international ones in there in a 5-round championship of a category that has been struggling. It doesn't totally make sense to me, but anyway, on to the actual big news of the week. Roland Dane has stepped down from the board at Triple8. Now, he gave up his shareholding a couple of years ago and he stepped down from day to day, but he'd stayed on at the board. He has stepped down. Someone who I've forgotten their name is taking over his position on the board. But this is big news because it means that there is no Danes involved in Triple8 anymore. Obviously, Jess was involved running day to day in that last year, but then with her move to America, America. She sold up and got out of it totally. So that is, as a, Roland started the team here many, many years ago, buying out from John Briggs. And it's, time moves on, but it's that lineage from the team is all over. The big question for me though is, what has Roland Dane got planned next? I don't quite believe that he's just setting off into the sunset and not doing anything. Maybe is he trying to angle, or is he in line for something, a bigger picture thing within Supercars, and that's why he's stepping away? Or he might surprise us all and just retire and enjoy the rest of his life. Now, as we did last week, myself and Scott sat down to run through the top half of town and give them a grading for the year. Well, maybe I was doing the gradings while Scott was trying not to offend anyone too much. This side of town was probably a bit easier because the results were better. You may notice that we're in the same clothes from last week. No, we didn't we just recorded it all together, and maybe we might have, we didn't do any sound checks, but we were, in between takes. So there may be a little bit more slurring and things like that towards it, but hopefully it all came out well. So enjoy the rest of the gradings for the top half of town. All right, we're back once again, and eagle-eyed viewers may notice that we're in the same clothes as last week because maybe we just had a pit stop in between. And, we're not doing any sound checks, but we may be a couple more drinks deeper now while we go through the rest of the field. But welcome back again, Scott. Good to see you again.
Likewise, David. It's been a couple of minutes, but a P15S and a few bevies. Thanks to our friends at KRE for sponsoring tonight's episode. But it's all good.
So we'll kick it back off. If you haven't seen, last week we went through the back half of the field. So if you haven't seen that, maybe watch that one first. Get the views up. And now we'll go through the top half of the field with a bit of a recap on how they went during the year, and we'll give them some gradings. So here is the first one for this week. So we've got Erebus, I suppose the tale of two halves, these guys, for the year. A very shaky start to the year, which, as we saw, they were 8th in the team's championship. Jack LeBrock was doing okay at this point of the year, 11th in the team's championship, with the other two not scoring that many points compared to him, I suppose. Todd did a reasonable job at the start of the year, but Brody we were a little bit disappointed in. Towards the end of the year, though, it definitely kind of flipped around results-wise. Brody having a very strong end to the year, and Jack probably slipping a little bit, not assisted by a couple of DNFs, and then he actually sat out Adelaide. I haven't included Cooper's results in here because they were nothing to shout about. I suppose the big surprise, jumping to 6th in the team's championship from where they were kind of at the... Well, they were reasonable at Bathurst, but then by mid-year, they were kind of disappointing, I suppose.
I think sort of Sandown, or just before Sandown, they really started to get their philosophy with this new aero package sorted, and they were starting to take some big strides. I think it looked like that they were using what worked last year. There's been a lot of changes from the last year to the start of this year, and things have changed, and maybe that hasn't worked, but they've found their secret sauce and what works with their chassis and their engineering philosophy. We're really starting to kick some goals. We saw Brody kick into gear and what we know he's obviously capable of, and started to get back to his old form and what he had last year. Jack was there or thereabouts during the year, but he never really set the world alight. I was expecting some big things from Jack this year, knowing how big a step he made in the Gen 3 car at MSR last year. I was quite excited for him moving into the championship winning team. I thought, this is going to be a good thing, as much as we didn't really want to see him go because he's a really cool dude. And now he's a first-time dad with his wife, Ken's, and their little baby, Romy. But, I think Jack himself would probably be a little disappointed in where he ended up in the year, but what could have been, right? Like if Brady had had the full year and maybe they got their stuff together a little bit earlier, we could have seen them further up the grid.
Yeah, I do. You really wonder, had the whole whatever happened. Let's not get into that. But if that hadn't have happened, and they kicked off at Bathurst with 2 Coca-Cola cars, kind of like nothing had happened, would Jack have then had more a season like Will Brown had last year, where you knock off 3, 4, 5 wins during the year, and Brody would have challenged for the championship, or were they always a bit doomed to fail with the changes in the aero?
It's one of those questions I don't think we'll ever know what the answer is. I mean, if someone at the start of the year, I would have said yes. I 100% agree that they would have followed that trajectory. But seeing how much changes were made to the cars, and they were huge changes, but it was enough to for these guys to sort of slip back down the grid. It just didn't seem to work for them until they found what worked for their chassis. There's a big song and dance about their chassis being all encompassing and better than anybody else's. I don't understand that. But drivers, if you tell the driver it's better than something else, they're more likely to. And some of the drivers are superstitious. A lot of them aren't. But if they think that that's what is going to give them an advantage over the next team or the next driver, the teams would be mad not to take that on board if they can.
I suppose this year's probably good practice with the aero changes, because there's some significant aero changes next year for the team that's shifting north.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, they had the wind tunnel testing over in the US. So the rear wings on the cars for the Camaro were widened 100 millimeters. They were set back 50 millimeters, so they're in exactly the same position as what the Camaros are. The Mustangs are. So there's little tweaks here and there, but it was enough. We haven't heard as much about that silly P word during the year, which is great because we just want to go racing, right? But the cars are that
just
close.
Don't mention it's Cam Waters.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's right. When you're not in races or not doing as well as you like, there's got to be a reason other than your own driving, right? But this is I think these guys, it's a year that could have been.
Yeah. So overall for the gradings, I mean, Jack, I'm going to say a C for Jack, because he should have. There's 0 podiums, there's 0 wins. Like, he should have at least found the podium in the win column once. Then Brody, it's hard, but I think he probably deserves an A for the end. Just even if you just look at the last kind of 4 rounds, he was on a tear. Like, they were super quick at Sandown. They dominate. Well, it was Bathurst was between them and the 88. He won at Surfers Paradise, and the results were still pretty good at Adelaide, even though they weren't outright brilliant. They were still pretty good results. Todd gets to keep his B+, I suppose. And the team overall, I'm going to give them a C, just because they started so bad, came on strong, so we'll meet in the middle.
I think if you look back to Sandown, they could have had both those cars on the podium, if not 1, 2 at Sandown, if they hadn't had their failures. And if things didn't go their way in Bathurst, they could have been had both of them on the podium at Bathurst as well, or very close to it.
Yeah, I think they probably a regret for them for the year would be kind of sacrificing the Jack LeBrock car at Bathurst to make sure that Brody was fine for that the safety car pit stop, because I vaguely remember that Jack ended up dropping back a bit in the field because of that stop.
Yeah, that's right. But what a cracking race! We've spoken about it. What could have been?
Yeah, So onwards and upwards next year. It'll be interesting with a lot of people departing there. And I'm not sure if they'll still be sixth in the championship next year. Next up, we have Dick Johnson Racing, who in the middle of the year was fifth in the championship, and then they ended up finishing fifth in the championship with a lot of movement around the mid of the field. That was a bit of a surprise. I gave them both a C+. They were 10th and 6th in the championship at that point. Fairly similar results through. The second half of the year, though, I was surprised with these guys. Look at the top 10 figures. 2 top 10s for Anton in the second half of the year and 1 for Will. They did not move forward, considering they were still 5th in the team's championship. They dropped to 9th and 11th overall. Very similar points-wise in the end, though. So it's not a driver issue, I don't think. Although next year, I suppose, it could be very different with the incoming team.
I think this year is a reflection on why next year is going to be so different. They're almost cleaning house at Stapleton. They're at DJR. I got a title-winning driver coming in next year. Some really good engineers and some back of house staff. A lot of changes, I believe, are coming through there. So once they find their feet, these guys could be pushing really, really hard. And I was really surprised at the lack of results for Will this year. And to that point, Anton as well too. Something just wasn't clicking right there. Those guys are well better and the team's well better than what the results are. So I think Will having Brody there next year will really, I think you'll see a better Will next year. And I think these guys could be progressing further up the grid and a lot better results.
I'm getting into next year, I suppose. I'm expecting them to have a slowish start, but then I think, at least Brody will be challenging for the championship in Adelaide next year. I think they'll do enough to get themselves into that top 10, and then he'll clean up in the second half of the year again, is my prediction.
Yeah. They just there was no consistency. The only thing that was consistent was their lack of results. It was
Yeah, I recall many times during the year where I thought they'd actually turned it around. And you're like, okay, they're back on it. DJR is going to be in the fight. And then they never quite. But even on those on weekends, they were, say, 4th or 5th. They never looked at that point where they were going to take a win this year.
And when you say that our on weekend we're fighting for 5th, that's still not good enough for a team like that.
No.
With that pedigree and the people that they got there, they should be 5th. Should be the worst of their results.
But when you think like the 4 teams in front of them, when they had an on weekend, they were winning. When you had Erebus behind them, who took out a couple of wins. You had Matt Stone Racing took a couple of wins. Even BJR had a win, and all of those guys, when they had an on weekend, they took a win. Whereas these guys, they never had that. And there wasn't even one where you're like, oh, they got taken out from second position with 3 laps to go or something like that. They were never in that kind of proper battle for the win. Even the podiums weren't convincing podiums or anything like that. It was.
I mean, the battles they were having were at the wrong end of the grid. And it comes to, like we were talking in the last video, is about qualifying. If you're not qualifying well, you can't race well. But there's a little bit of the Blanchards about this year with these guys. They seem to get in good position, and then they get in
squander it.
And that's right. They squander it, or they engineer their way backwards for some reason. For me, it was a very odd year for these guys.
Scores for the year. It's a tough one, but I'm thinking C minuses all round. It's very middle of the. It should probably be a C, but we expect DJR to win, so I'm going to chuck a minus on there. Um, I I think that's fair because yeah, it is what it is.
Uh, if it's not, I'm sure we'll hear about it.
Now, coming in fourth position, we have Grove Racing. Funnily enough, these guys were fourth in the team championship in the middle of the year. I gave them a B plus, with the Matty Payne getting a B plus and Richie getting a C overall. They were fifth and 13th in the championship at that point, 57% and 43% of the points each. Which then, when we move to the end of the season, stayed in fourth in the team championship, sixth overall for Matt Payne, but Richie dropped all the way down to 19th in the championship. Not having to sit out Adelaide, but he was already dropping backwards at that point. Yeah, he did. He kicked off this season quite well, but didn't. I don't know if he went backwards or lost faith or what happened. Because I fully expected him to have a stronger second half of the year than the first half.
I think, yeah, Richie, when I looked at the results for Richie, it really surprised me the lack of results. Like, this
Hmm.
guy, when you give him the right car, he'll be at the pointy end every race meeting. But something just wasn't clicking there. Even Matty didn't sort of rise to the pointy end like I thought he would. Like the end of the year they had last year, winning that race in Adelaide, I thought, okay,
Hmm.
these guys are on. They've got a great engineering group there. Um, Matty himself's a young bloke and seems to be absorbing him. You've got Garth Tender in your corner. You know, how can you not be progressing? So um, maybe the progression is not happening as fast as they like. But it'd be interesting to see with having Kai come in next year, whether that hampers it or he can push Matty a little bit. But yeah, I was really surprised with Richie this year. Um, but give him the right car, it'll be singing a different story.
Yeah, that's and I think if Richie had been the one to take the second seed at Triple Eight, that he would have had multiple wins this year. Maybe not challenging for the championship, but he would have been somewhere probably in the top five of the championship in that car. And then I didn't think it would have been that big a drop going to the Groves, but they didn't seem to. The kind of step that they made last year with Reynolds fighting for wins and that towards the end of the year, I was expecting them to be more consistently fighting for wins all this year, which they didn't make that progress. And I wonder if that is them kind of missing Reynolds, and then maybe they might even go further backwards next year with Kai coming in.
I've been thinking about Richie in the last couple of months. I've been wondering whether it's a Mustang Camaro thing. Like when he was at Tickford, it was, he didn't have a really good run there. At Triple 8, yes, they're a different beast again, but he running the Camaro. Maybe when he's at Premier next year, maybe the Camaro package or what the engine delivers and may suit his driving style a little bit more, and we'll see what we've seen in regards to potential. And maybe he will be up there. I don't. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but maybe the package is what's not matching Richie's ability.
Because there's something missing there. Because I mean, when we've seen him turn up, my God, does he turn up?
Absolutely, and I mean, his personality is quite dry, and people think that he's disinterested. But when you actually see what he actually is like at a racetrack, he's very determined, very fixated on doing a good job. But um, it just the cars that he seems to drive don't seem to match what he's capable of. So fingers crossed, next year maybe that might change.
So overall, I think Matt is a B. He's definitely not into the A's yet, and I don't even think my expectation was more, so I can't even give him a B plus. Richie, C, and team overall probably C as well, which is hard. But then it's not like the two teams in front are going to get A's. So, yeah, I think that's where we're at with this one.
I agree.
In third position, we have Walkinshaw and Andretti United. So, replacing Nick Percat obviously made massive changes to the team. There was a massive points gap between the two drivers mid-season once again. And as we go to the end of the season, well, the gap closed up, but not by much. This was the biggest gap between teammates, which, funnily enough, last year was also the biggest gap between two teammates. Ryan, granted, he was a rookie. There was flashes of brilliance. He didn't get off to a good start at Bathurst with the double DNF. That was at Bathurst, where he scored the two DNFs in the first round. There was front row start in Wanneroo. It was probably just too up and down. And when your teammate has 19 top 10 finishes during the year, there's a lot more expected of you. So, I'm not sure if we're expecting too much from a rookie, but he didn't take a win like the kind of outstanding rookies from the previous years. And it's not like the equipment is up to winning, which Chaz showed.
I think Ryan's a young fella in a hurry. And I think he sort of probably expected more out of himself, and the team probably thought that he'd be a lot quicker than what he was. But first year in the category, right? I mean, we've seen it happen before. I think next year will be a different story. But I think Chaz has matured a lot too, from in the previous years. So I think the results are more on Chaz rather than the team this year. I think he's carried this car a lot this year. I mean, look what happened in Adelaide. He was driving a parachute, and what he did, that was seriously impressive. But I think Ryan, with a year under his belt, with a bit of tempered expectation, more consistency next year, I think you'll see him further up the grid. But I mean, Chaz, look, he scooped a lot of the awards at the gala this year as well too, and quite rightly,
award, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much, absolutely. And but like I said before, I think he's made the results better than what they would have been regardless, and he's really taking on that main driver role there to raise the bar for the team. And next year will be quite interesting to see where they go, because they're obviously going to the Super in 26, whether their concentration on that being a homologation team for that, whether that plays into anything. I don't think so. A lot of these teams are very professional in what way they go racing. I don't think it'll affect them, but I think it may well be status quo, and hopefully that Ryan tempers his enthusiasm a little bit more and gets the consistency back into his driving.
Yeah, I can see him fighting a lot more towards the front next year. But unfortunately, though, this is this year, so we have to give them a grading. We'll start off with the good, Chaz, an A. I don't think too many people can argue with him getting an A. It has been a very good year. Probably the only disappointment was that he wasn't in the fight for Bathurst. He did take the championship, I suppose, the second last round. Then the team overall, a B, and I'm going to give Ryan a C. Just, there's definite room for improvement there.
Absolutely, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Now in second position, we've got Tickford Racing, who started the team with high hopes, going back to two cars. So it's all going to be focused, and they were going to come out of the blocks blazing. And, well, they didn't. But they had a very strong second half of the year. The results didn't change too much. They were 4th and 7th at the midpoint, and towards the end of the year, 4th and 5th. So, Thomas got their gloves out a bit towards the second half of the year and got definitely in that battle. 3 podiums towards the end of the year, a very strong end. Still hasn't quite got that win, but it is impressive. top tens, both of them having a lot of those. Cam found himself on the podium 8 times. It was just a very strong end to the year, and that's looking good for next year. And these guys would have actually had the playoff system worked this year. These two would have been fighting the two Triple8 guys for the championship battle as well, which is, I suppose, a good sign for the system next year.
Randall's had a cracking second half of the year, but he looks to be happy as being the second fiddle in the team, though. I'd like to see him have a little bit more mongrel in him and get the elbows a little bit more and push Cam a little bit more. I think you can see Cam's a lot more comfortable against Thomas in the team because he knows he's not going to get pushed by him. But these guys could elevate their performances more if they, and show their true worth. What I believe is dragged them down a bit was the lack of quality in the end of year video. It was disappointing.
I genuinely haven't. I need to look it up because I haven't seen it yet.
But compared to the last couple of years, I think it was a B minus for that instead of a B plus or at least an A. But in all seriousness, these guys can fight up the pointy end consistently. Cam's one of the fastest guys in qualifying, and for one reason or another, they're not converting. But I'd just like to see Thomas have a bit more mongrel in him and fighting for more. And I think once he sees the fruits of that, I think we'll see a different driver.
Yeah, I think if he can just get over that hump and get that first win into him, then all of a sudden he'll get that mentality like, second's no good, I need to win. Whereas at the moment, he's like, yeah, I've got a podium.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You're paid to go fast. You're paid to try and win races. Take that risk. Take that dive. Push that guy out of the way. Forget about what potentially could happen with penalties. If the guys around you know you're not going to fight, they'll take advantage of it.
Yeah, and we have seen a bit of that, I think, this year where, in the battle, people are probably taking a little bit too much of a, advantage of that he's not going to fight them back.
That's the old adage, right? Good guys come last. So
yeah. So scores for the year, an A minus, I think, for Cam. The qualifying speed was there, but the race was lacking a little bit. So I can't give him the same score as what I gave Chaz. So an A minus there. B plus for Tom. He's definitely improved, but then there is room there to improve. And I think overall for the team, a B plus as well. They did do a better job than Walkinshaw's overall. They're definitely moving forward. If you only looked at the second half of the year, might have been scraping into an A, but the first half of the year seemed to be a bit of a building phase.
I think regardless of whether you're a Chevy or a Ford supporter, if we need one team taking against the other from both manufacturers we want to see good racing, we want to see hard racing, and we want to see them both battling it out. So these guys can do it, and hopefully they can show that ability next year, and we have a cracking season.
Yeah, if Cam's not in the championship fight next year, I'll be very disappointed.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
And finally, we've got the team's champions, Triple8 Racing. So middle of the year, I was critical on Feeney, gave him B plus because, he was really disappointing. He was only third in the championship. So, and I think that's why I might have given them a B plus overall, because obviously there was room for improvement. But as we went towards the end of the year, the top tens there says it all. There was 24 races over the year. Will was in the top 10 23 times. Absolutely ridiculous. Like, Brock Feeney's stats, extremely good. Will's just ridiculous. So I don't know. else do you say? Just an outstanding year from him.
100%. I think Will really surprised me this year. I knew he had some race wins in him, but the level of consistency across the whole season is what got him the championship. I mean, he didn't have the most race wins, but
No.
he was consistent every round. He was he had more podiums than anybody else. But he's got that laughable larrikin persona, but deep down, he's a hardcore racer, and Brock's no slouch either. So to beat Brock in for the first year in the same gear says quite a lot about Will that probably a lot of us didn't realise was there. We knew there was potential, but to do that in the first year in a new team, we all talk about how well Triple8 go through every year. They're successful for a reason. They have a lot of people come and go, yet they stay competitive. So whatever they do is working right. But what a great season for these guys. And it'll be interesting to see with the new point system next year how that relates to what it does for these guys moving forward. But I don't think you'll see much difference.
I think the only thing that will drop them out next year will be if they're slightly unlucky at a round. And like you've got Gold Coast there, say they get tangled up in an incident. And I think that's the only reason that they drop out. Just Will, if any criticism last year, like he was probably a little bit inconsistent. And I expected him to take a little bit of time to warm up with the new team and that this year. But he was relentless. And some of his drives as well, like it might qualify behind Brock, but then just the way he drove in the race, and he was just like relentless going at it, and breaking whoever he was racing down, getting past them, and then driving away. Like it's very, you could say Shane Gisborne or Scott McLaughlin like.
Well, I look at the last race of the season. Yes, he'd won the championship. He had nothing to lose, but we could see the level of a quality of a driver that he was to do what he did, to basically be that far behind in lap one. That was a brilliant drive. That's got to be up there with one of the best drives we've seen for a number of years.
Yeah, it was an outstanding year. So, I mean, grading wise, Brock an A, because you didn't win the championship, and then Will and the team, you have to give him an A plus. There was virtually no mistakes. It was just extremely good year.
There's no more superlatives to throw out there, is there?
Yeah, that's it.
The only, it's not even a criticism, is the only thing I'd like to see more is, like we're talking about Thomas before with Brock, is to get his elbows out a little bit more, be a little bit more hardcore with some of his racing, and hopefully that gains some better results, because again, if Will knows that he's going to have the wood over him a little bit, he might find it hard to progress up to where he could potentially be a winner in the next couple of years easily. But get the elbows out and give us some more good racing.
Yeah, I think the big fear probably for the rest of the field is that these two will they're probably going to be teammates for a number of years, and they will just keep pushing themselves to the next level. I suppose a bit like what we saw previously when it was Lowndes and Jamie in the same team, or then Jamie and Shane, and that will just continually push the team to new levels, and it's on the rest of the field to try and stay in the same postcode as them.
Will's one of the most determined guys. He wants to win everything he does. He wants to be the first in everything he does. Like he's like almost like the new smiling assassin. He's got that American persona, like I was saying before, but he is hardcore. He wants to be first in everything he does, and he's in a team now where he can demand that and expect it. And like you say, if they deliver that round after round, these guys could quite easily be streets ahead, and everyone's going to have to play catch up.
This is why we have the probably the new championship system from next year, because these guys would have the potential next year to just walk away with it even further.
Well, maybe one of the teams that don't want to have the new system in place, but
yeah, if you're a Triple8, you definitely wouldn't be voting for it. I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, mate, we always talk about the cream rising to the top. It's something that it rings true. But yeah, that part of the championship will maybe potentially bring the field closer a little bit if they don't play their cards right.
Yeah, but even if you look at the results from this year at the end of the year, they would have still taken out the championship regardless. So that's every team and driver ranked for the season. Down in the comments if you agree or disagree with us. Probably a bit more disagreeing than agreeing, judging by how these things usually go. But once again, a massive thanks, Scott, for coming on. It's been great chatting with you for the last couple of hours, really. And a few drinks on this, so hopefully we're not slurring our words too much. But it's been great fun.
Thanks very much, Dave. I really appreciate you having me on board, mate. I've really enjoyed the friendship you and I have actually developed. Sorry to everyone to listen to my voice carry on a bit there, but I hopefully get a bit of passion across that I have for the sport, for the teams, for people in general. I really appreciate being able to talk to yourself and to impart a bit of knowledge potentially, and to ask some questions of the category in regards to moving forward. And hopefully we get to see some cracking racing next year, and we can have more fun next year, and everyone can tell us that we're right or wrong, and we'll have a beer and say cheers, and I hope you have a lovely Christmas, and we'll do it again next year.
So that's mine and Scott's gradings for everyone for the year. Down in the comments, do you agree or disagree with what we said? What else would you are you happy with kind of the statistics that were shown on there, or should we look at some other metrics? I've been doing this each year, and I've kind of settled on those metrics at the moment. I think the points battle between the two teammates, like the percentage of points scored, is a good one, because you might see, off the top of my head, I'm trying to think who it was, but I think it was the MSR boys, and, Percat had seemed to have a really, really good year, and Cam Hills was a bit ordinary. And then when you looked, they were kind of 8th and 12th in the championship, and I think the points were about 55%, 45%. And you're like, whew, yeah, Cam actually did do a pretty good job there. But if you have any better ideas, let me know down in the comments, because always open to suggestions there. I'd like to, in this final video for the year, there will be an unboxing video later this week that is very exciting, but this will be it for my normal weekly news videos. I'm not going to do one on Christmas Eve unless something really, really big happens, and then we might sneak one in. But the plan is, this is the final one. This is the 80th video for the year. The unboxing one will be the 81st. It's been a lot of work this year. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, though. Averaging 5,000 views for the normal weekly videos, it just blows me away. When I started this, I was surprised that anybody outside of my friend group was watching, and now we're kind of at that. Massive shout out to everyone who's watched a video this year, especially the people who have commented. I love all your comments, and in general, I love all your comments, and I try to get back to everyone. And the people who comment every week, it blows me away that you're quite invested in this. Massive shout out to the guests I've had on this year, especially the Super 2 kids, Campbell Logan and Brad Vaughan. I really, really appreciate the time you guys have spent with me this year. It's been awesome getting to know you guys. Hopefully 2025 is bigger and better for both of you, and hopefully we can still do some stuff together. We'll see how we go. Massive shout out to Scott, who's been on a few videos recently. Hopefully we can do some more stuff next year. Really, really enjoy having in-depth chats with another fan of the sport. really good doing things like that. And then, of course, Todd Hazelwood, the Bathurst winner. It was just like chatting to a mate, really. Absolutely awesome. Jack Perkins, amazing the amount of time this guy, and it was a bit like chatting with Scott, nearly like chatting to a mate about the category overall and things like that. And then Cam Hill and Cam Crick, it was very, very short and sweet, but I did get to spend some time with you guys at Sandown. It blows me away that people like, actual drivers and that have time to spend on my little YouTube channel. So just really blown away by everything. I really appreciate all the comments and everyone viewing. That's it for the year. So I hope everyone has a safe and happy break. I'll be back in 2025, bigger and better and everything, hopefully. So until next year, I'm still Dave, and I'll catch you later.